Bonjour! Welcome to another episode of Cuisine Michelle. I'm Michelle. So today I'm going to be making a quiche I have made before, but I haven't made for quite some time, so I thought it was time to make it again and share it with everyone. This is a bacon and leek quiche, and it comes to us from foodandwine.com. So these are the ingredients that you're going to need in order to make this quiche. We're going to need some all-purpose flour, salt, unsalted butter, eggs, ice water, bacon. Now it's either one large leek or you can have some smaller ones like what I have and combine them, but you need leek no matter what. Some fresh thyme, which I've already chopped up, kosher salt, white pepper, Gruyere cheese, and heavy cream. One other special thing that you're going to need is a tart pan that has a removable bottom and some pie weights, or if you have beans on hand, like navy beans, those kinds of things. If you've ever weighted down pie crust before with those, then you'll know what I'm talking about. Otherwise, pie weights are really great for this, what we're going to need it for. Anyway, we're going to start out with making our dough for the pie crust. All right, so to start out with, we're going to measure out into the food processor 300 grams, which is 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And then this is 1.5 sticks, which is 12 tablespoons of unsalted butter that's cold, cut into these little small chunks like this. You will also want to have your food processor fitted with the dough blade, because we are making dough after all. But I also want to tell you that this is for a double crust. So this is more crust than you're actually going to need. If you want to make half of it, that's fine, but it does make just enough. So I decided this time to go ahead and make a double, which is what the actual first recipe calls for, to make 2 quiches, but I only need 1. So that's what I'm going with here. So in this, we're going to pulse this until we end up with coarse crumbs. Okay, so you can see in here that we do have coarse crumbs. There is still some kind of flour around the outside, so I keep scraping down the outside every so often just so I can get those to combine, but we don't want to overwork the flour and butter because we will end up with kind of a tough texture. So after you've got that into its coarse crumb stage, then we have to add an egg yolk. So just 1 egg yolk. So if you are doing half of this, you'll have to measure your egg yolk by weight and then put in half. So that's why making a whole one is actually a little bit easier to have this be a double crust. And then you need 14 tablespoons of your ice water. Again, we are going to cap that off and then pulse it until the dough has moistened and formed together. It's looking pretty good in there. Once we have that all formed, we are going to be flouring our work surface so that we can get that out of there and make it come together a little bit. I may have to incorporate just a little bit extra flour in here. It's fairly humid these days. It is summertime in the Midwest, so it may be because of having a little bit more humidity in the air. Honestly, I can't remember the last time that I made this recipe how wet the dough comes out to be, if you will. It's pretty sticky. What we're supposed to do is to knead the dough a little bit, but since this is fairly sticky, like I said, I'm going to add just a bit of flour to it to incorporate as I need it, because otherwise that's too sticky for having a pie crust dough, I should say. Yeah, that's better. So if you end up with one that's a little bit on the sticky side when you take it out like what I did, then just add a little bit of flour. You don't need a ton, as you saw. And then they told us to gently knead it, so I'm not making a big effort into it. We're just kneading it just a little bit. And then we are to form it into a round disc shape. We're going to cover that up in plastic wrap, and we're going to put it into the fridge for about 20 minutes. Okay, so now I have had this in the refrigerator for 20 minutes. I am also heating my oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit right now. It's probably going to ding pretty soon. Meanwhile, what I'm doing is I'm going to cut this dough approximately in half. I'm going to maybe make just slightly bigger than half because I want to make sure I've got enough to roll out. So no, I did not clean this up because I know I was going to need a surface here that was floured anyway. So go ahead and get that plenty floured. And then we are going to be rolling this out so that it reaches to be just slightly bigger than the size of this pan. All right, so I've went ahead and rolled this out, and it's plenty bigger than this, so we're going to have plenty of excess to roll off. I rolled it somewhat thin, but not too much. I'm going to take that and kind of put over my rolling pin a little bit to help me so that I can move it into the tart pan. And you do not want to stretch this at all whenever you are putting it in because it will shrink up. So make sure that you leave plenty of edge space when you're putting it in your tart pan. So be really loose with the way that you put that in. Sometimes people like to stretch their dough out. Do not do that because otherwise you'll end up with really shrunken in tart. I do know that from making this the last time in the pictures that I have. So make sure that you look at my blog for the recipe on this. You can see the pictures that I did with it. Anyway, I'm going to get that all set together here and kind of leave a little bit of excess because, like I said, it does tend to shrink up just a bit, so I'm going to kind of leave a little bit of an excess edge there in the hopes that maybe this time I could cut off my edge afterwards. That's going to be my experiment this time to see if that works a little bit better. Last time it shrunk in, and I mean, it worked, but it was kind of a little sad looking in some of the edges, and I would like to avoid that. So that's part of why I made the full dough recipe, so that I could do this, and this is a little bit thin maybe on how I rolled it out. I'm not sure. Anyway, after we have this, while your oven is heating, you're going to take this and put it back in the fridge for 10 minutes before baking it. All right, this has been in the fridge for 10 minutes. We are now going to cover it with aluminum foil really gently. It doesn't have to be perfect. Try to get it as much as possible. If there's a little gap, it's okay. That's actually more my excess than anything else. And then we're going to throw in the pie weights. That's to keep it from bubbling up. So I try to kind of evenly distribute those. And then we're going to bake it with the pie weights for 30 minutes. All right, so we have baked this for the 30 minutes. We are now going to take up our pie weights out of here. I still got a little bit of a bubble in there, but I think it'll be all right. I'll settle down a little bit probably. After we remove that, we're going to return this to the oven for an additional 10 to 15. Keep your eye on it because the last time that I did make this, 15 was too much. So I want to make sure that doesn't happen again. So be careful. Okay, so once you have it done, and this was only 10 minutes and it started to get brown, you want to put that on it says a sturdy baking sheet. So I guess something that is like this. I went ahead and did that. We're going to set that aside. Now, we're going to move on to a pan here, and we're going to be cooking up the stuff that goes in our filling. So this is bacon. We have 8 ounces of it. I use some that's kind of thick cut. I mean, it's not super thick cut, but I cut it into little strips like this, as you can see. We're going to cook that until it just starts to crisp at the edges. All right, so we are now getting a bit crisp here, not super crisp. You don't want it to be full-on crispy cooked because then it'll be not as nice or anything, but it is definitely crisp and cooked. So we're gonna pull this out and let it drain on a paper towel. I wanna leave that, and I'm gonna lower my heat to medium. And we wanna leave that rendered fat behind because we're gonna use that for the next step, which is going to be your leek. You're going to want that to be cut up into thin little slices. I usually do like half rounds on that. Once we get all the bacon out of here, we're going to add the leek to our pan. Get that all separated. Then to that leek, I'm going to be adding a ½ teaspoon of that fresh thyme, which I've already chopped up. We're going to season that with some kosher salt. You don't need to go super heavy since we've got bacon already for saltiness. And then some white pepper. Again, this is just to taste. We're going to cook these leeks until they're softened, but we don't want them to get brown. All right, now that we've gotten these softened, and I know that it might look like they've gotten brown, but it's actually just the fond of the pan that has gotten in there a little bit, which is totally fine. But we don't need the excess oil, so we're going to use that same slotted spoon. Try to get as much off of there as we can. Transfer these into a bowl to let them kind of get cooled off for a moment. You can turn off your burner, of course, because we don't need to cook anymore. Right here. All right. So I'm just going to kind of spread them up into the bowl so they can get a little bit cooled. They don't have to be perfectly cooled, but they are going to need to be somewhat cooled off. So we're going to let those cool. And while we do, we are going to work on making the cream mixture. All right, for our cream mixture, here in the bowl, I've got 2 whole eggs and then 1 more egg yolk. Those are from large eggs, I should specify. And then to that, I'm going to be adding 1.25 cups of heavy cream. And then we are just going to get those whisked together. All right, so now what we're going to do is put some of our leeks kind of all over the place here on our shell that we baked. And originally it said to mix these together, but actually I think it would be easier if we spread these out individually on here. So we've got those kind of spread out a bit, if I can. Trying. And then we can take our bacon, do the same kind of thing. And then we have 4 ounces of shredded up Gruyere cheese. So we're going to put that all over. Put that all over that. And then last, we are going to take our cream mixture and pour that atop. Just going to kind of see if I can get that cream mixture to lay a little bit more evenly with the cheese. Not entirely necessary, but just want it to. Okay. Beautiful. It is now ready to hit the oven. The same temperature as before. This was the 375 degrees Fahrenheit. We're going to be baking this for 30 minutes. All right, so here we are. Actually, this is going to be a final plating. This is what it looks like fresh out of the oven. And if you decide to serve this right after it's come out of the oven, you need to wait for 15 minutes, let it sit on the baking tray because it's kind of still settling out and finishing its baking process during this time. I'm not going to be doing a taste test of this one because, again, just like my last video, I'm going to be taking this to that same event, so I don't want to go and cut into it because it's going to be presented there. Anyway, I assure you that it is very, very tasty since I have made it before, and I hope that you'll give it a try. And we'll see you in our next video, I hope. Please subscribe and hit the notifications so that you can find out when we have another video come out. And if you haven't already, give it a like, share it with your friends, and leave me a comment telling me what you think. And we'll see you then. Au revoir.